Every leader knows that a thriving organization depends on the energy, productivity, and commitment of its people. But few leaders are able to cultivate the employee engagement and performance needed for this level of success. What's the difference? Positive leadership practices. Welcome to the Positive Leadership Movement Podcast with your host, positive work culture expert, Alex Bratty. Ready to harness the power of positive leadership? Let's dive right in.
Hello and welcome to episode 32 of the Positive Leadership Movement Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bratty, and in this episode, we're going to talk about surviving and better yet, thriving as the pandemic drags on and on and on. Are you feeling it yet? We all are, right? Okay, but before we get into all that, as always, I just want to take a moment to thank you for being here. If you enjoy this show and get value from it, please subscribe, rate, and review it. And remember, if you've got a question about positive leadership, just drop me a line at questions@positiveleadershipmovement.com and I'll address it in a future episode. And in fact, this week's episode was inspired by an email I received from Felipe in Spain. Thank you, Felipe. He asked if I could talk about Works or Models by Dr. Seligman. Now, of course, he's referring to Dr. Martin Seligman, who is widely considered to be the founding father of positive psychology. So what we'll dive into today is how you can use one of his most famous models of well-being to help you survive and thrive right now. Now, we've talked about this model of well-being before on the podcast. I think it was episode 18. But I really liked Felipe's request because it gives us a chance to see how we can apply it in such challenging times, and that is often kind of the test of a model or a theory, if you like. Does it hold up when the rubber meets the road? And the rubber is definitely meeting the road right now. And I believe it does hold up, and we'll get into that. So first, let's just review where we're kind of at, though, in sort of these times. So as I record this episode, most countries and states in the U.S. are cautiously reopening their economies after weeks in lockdown to help curb the spread of COVID-19. And for some, it can't happen soon enough. And certainly it is much needed because unemployment continues to soar. As of today in the U.S., unemployment is at 38.6 million people, which I believe is approaching about 15%. It's pretty dire. At the same time, we're not returning to life as we used to know it as we do this reopen, right? I mean, if you're headed back to a physical place of work, you're probably being asked to wear a mask and to help facilitate frequent and deep sanitation of spaces. And many office workers will continue to work from home for several more weeks to come. So the bottom line right now is that yes, there's hope at the end of this seemingly never-ending tunnel, but even with the restrictions being lifted, the quote-unquote new way of doing business and approaching life can take its toll. And I think we've all felt like that at one time or another, like we're just trying to hold on and white-knuckle it through to the other side of these crazy times. And we've talked about that on the episodes over the past few weeks. And so I hear you. I absolutely hear you. At the same time, though, there is a simple approach you can incorporate in your leadership to help you and your team, as I mentioned before, not just to survive, but possibly even thrive despite the pandemic pandemonium. And it's what's called the PERMA theory of well-being. As I mentioned earlier, it was developed by Dr. Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania. And actually, if you want to check out his extensive research in a very easy to digest way, pick up his book called Flourish. It is a quick and fascinating read. But anywho, to translate the science speak of PERMA theory of well-being, I like to just think of it as the formula for flourishing. And essentially, this formula has 5 elements that we can cultivate to improve our well-being and achieve a state of flourishing. And those 5 elements are positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishments. As a positive leader, you can nurture these both for yourself and your team. So Let's run through them and see what are they and how do they apply today. So the first one is positive emotions. That's the P in PERMA. And yes, this is exactly what you think it is. Feeling happy, feeling excited, interested, joyful, feeling love, feeling contentment, and any other emotion you can think of that makes you feel good. As I always reiterate on this show, this doesn't mean that we're slapping a happy face on things when you're feeling down or frustrated or angry or whatever those other difficult emotions are, right? We absolutely must acknowledge and deal with those emotions so we can let them pass through us. And we talked about that on previous episodes too. But what's really powerful here is that positive emotions have adaptive value. And what I mean by that is there's extensive research that shows that when we experience positive emotions frequently, we grow our cognitive capabilities and our capacity for resilience grows too. So what better time than now, right? Now more than ever, we need to find opportunities to experience positive emotions throughout the day. Now, this is not hard to do. Even when faced with uncertain times and dire circumstances such as they are, there are always simple ways to create some joy. I mean, take a few minutes to play with your dog. Send a humorous meme to your team. Start your meetings with a fun question like name a song with a number in the title. We did that this week on a team and it worked so great and everybody had such a good time. The options are endless. You just need to be mindful of creating some moments of joy, right? And that's what this often comes down to is just knowing that these particular elements exist and when we access them, when we cultivate them, we can get into a more thriving state, right? So that's number one, positive emotions. Number two is engagement. So think about this. Have you ever had an experience at work where you were just so engrossed in a task or activity that you lost track of time, nothing else around you seemed to matter, you were just totally absorbed in what you were doing? You've probably experienced that. That is what engagement is all about. It's also referred to as being in flow or being in the zone. And when you spend time in this state, it creates a feeling of fulfillment and usually makes people feel incredibly vitalized about their work. So think about what puts you in flow and ask each member of your team what puts them in flow. And then what you can do is you can make a plan to maximize the time each person spends doing those tasks and minimize the time on other tasks. And as you do this, you can encourage your team to do some task trading, right? So that everyone ends up with a good number of activities that put them in flow every day. Now, obviously, it's far from possible to spend every living moment in flow. You'd probably get quite exhausted by it too, because it does take up your energy and your concentration. But if we can maximize it and optimize those times spent in flow, it will make us feel so much more fulfilled in what we're doing right now. And of course, I mean, if you are one of the people who are stuck at home and don't have a job right now, find other ways in your life to get in that state of flow, to be engaged. So maybe it's cooking, maybe just your mind just gets so absorbed and you're in the moment. Maybe it's going for a run. Whatever it is for you, just find a way to have that sense of full engagement, and it will absolutely increase your well-being. All right, number 3 is relationships. And this, of course, is all about positive and high-quality relationships. These are crucial to our mental, emotional, and physical well-being. And we haven't talked about this so much on this show, the power of social connection. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but think about it this way, not only do our relationships keep us socially connected at a time when we have to be physically separated, but the other part of it is you just never know the opportunities that develop and open up as you collaborate with colleagues, right? So think about the ways that you could get more socially connected and cultivate positive, high-quality relationships in your life right now. And of course, right now, technology is your friend in this, right? Pre-coronavirus, I would have been telling you to go meet that person in person, right? Schedule a coffee date, a lunch date, whatever. But hey, that's not necessarily possible or advisable right now, so use technology. And if you're exhausted by video calls, I'm totally with you. That is exactly what we did last week's episode on. So check that out if you want to know why those are so exhausting, because yes, they are. And yes, there's a real reason for it. So if you're exhausted by doing Zoom or WebEx or Skype or whatever, hey, text, email, or better yet, pick up the phone. The good old telephone is your friend. And I promise that when you have these positive human interactions, whatever way you do them, they will lift you up. Because the reason is that unlike other energy that gets depleted when it's used, so think about it, physical energy, mental energy, emotional energy, when we exert those types of energy, we get depleted, right? We get tired when we exert them. But unlike that, relational energy, the energy that comes from relationships, it actually builds as we use it, and it makes us feel more energized. So please, please, even if you are feeling so completely hermit-like and introverted right now and like you don't want to speak to anybody, do it. Even if you have to force yourself, do it. Talk to someone who is positive, who is a high quality connection for you. And I promise when you hang up the phone or you finish your little text conversation, you will feel better. All right, fourth one in the PERMA model, the M is for meaning. And this element incorporates basically the feeling that we are doing something or we're part of something that's greater than just us. Now, sometimes, depending on the situation, this can be really tough. Indeed, it can be hard to find meaning in having to stay home for weeks on end with nothing to do during a pandemic. Hello? But here's where perspective comes in. Think about what Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl said, and he went through much tougher times than we are right now. He said, "The meaning of life is to give life meaning." So the onus is on us to find the meaning, right? Plus, let's face it, let's be really brutally honest here. As a leader, if you can't find meaning for yourself, you're not going to be much of an inspiration to the people who work for you. So, your task here is to find some meaning in some part of your life. It could be choosing to be the best leader you can possibly be right now to support your team through this. It could be thinking about end goals, such as, how your work benefits people or how you'll be more resilient after this experience. It might be having each member of your team share what they have found most meaningful right now. And, these don't have to be super profound, deep, what is the absolute meaning of life moments. We can just find meaning in simple moments, right? Find meaning in being present for one another, find meaning in showing up each day, find meaning in what we're doing and how we interact with each other, right? There are lots of different ways to find meaning. You just have to look for them. All right, the fifth one of the PERMA model is accomplishment. Yes, I know you type A'ers were waiting for this one. Of course you were. And actually, for all of us as human beings, we do have a need to feel productive and that we're achieving our goals. And for many of us these days, that is way easier said than done when businesses are closing, jobs are evaporating, and projects are halted. Still, we have that innate need to feel a sense of accomplishment. So find new ways to set different goals, right? And keep in mind, again, just like the meaning piece, these don't have to be earth-shattering goals right now. A personal goal as you work from home might be as basic as managing to shower and put on some regular work clothes before lunch each day. How novel would that be? Right? So, step back and evaluate the goals you want to work towards. Encourage team members to celebrate the wins, big or small. Okay, could be as small as, hey, I managed to put the trash out last night for the collection this morning. All wins are important right now. And finally on this one, be sure, and I know you do this because you're a positive leader, be sure to recognize accomplishment. You know everyone loves a shout out when they've done a great job, and you'll feel good for acknowledging them. They'll feel good for getting acknowledged, and it'll inspire the rest of the team to keep going and to set their sights on new goals. All right, so that's the formula for flourishing. It's 5 pieces: PERMA, positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. And when you bring all 5 of these elements together, you will not only survive, you will actually thrive. I mean, that's why Seligman called his book Flourish, right? Because thriving, flourishing, kind of the same thing. It's when you are mindful of these pieces and you cultivate them, you do get to that point where you're flourishing. And the best news of all is that these elements overlap and work together. So you don't have to sit there and think about, oh, what were those 5 things again? What do I got to do? What did Alex say about that? No. For example, let me show you how simple this can be. Let's say you write a short email to a colleague thanking them for a job well done. Right. And I don't just mean like, hey, thanks for doing that. I mean, thanks for doing that. I really appreciate it. It was important to me because, and you actually give a little bit of detail, right? So, it's short, but it's at the same time, it's specific, right? You're going to feel positive emotions doing this in writing the email. You're fostering engagement because you're letting that person know you see them. You're fostering the sense that like, hey, stay engaged with what we're doing, right? You're building the relationship, obviously. The exchange will likely feel meaningful to both of you, and you might even feel a sense of accomplishment in taking the time to express your gratitude in this way. Boom. You just checked off all 5 elements with a single email that probably took, 2 to 3 minutes to write. It's a no-brainer. And the chances are the recipient of that email will benefit from all of those experiences as well, right? Do you think they're going to feel positive emotions? Do you think they're going to feel like the relationship is being built? Do you think it's going to be meaningful for them to get this acknowledgement? Do you think they'll feel a sense of accomplishment because they're getting praised for an accomplishment? Yeah. Do you think they're going to continue to be engaged in what they do? Yeah. Right? So you see how this works. It ain't rocket science. It's actually super simple. And the reason that it doesn't just benefit you, it benefits the recipient in this particular instance is because flourishing is a good type of contagion. You see, when you flourish, the people around you flourish too. And that's why, as a positive leader, if you incorporate these elements, if you're mindful and deliberate in your actions to help do that with your team, you'll find that everybody is thriving, not just you. It's that simple and that easy. So thank you, Felipe, for your request this week, and I hope you and all our other listeners across the globe enjoyed it. If any of you want some simple practices to help you cultivate each of these 5 flourishing elements, you can just go to my website and download my book for free. 25 Tips for Leaders, How to Leverage the Science of Happiness to Increase Performance, Productivity, and Profitability. So you can download that for free at my website, happinessatworknow.com. And basically the way it's set up, there's 25 tips. Guess what? 5 tips for each of the 5 elements of the PERMA theory, or the flourishing formula, as I like to call it. All right. So, hey, back over to you, positive leaders now. How will you use this formula for flourishing with your team during the pandemic? Write to me at questions@positiveleadershipmovement.com and let me know. And likewise, if you've got a question like Felipe did and you want me to address it on an episode, shoot me a note at that email address too. All right, that's it from me for this week. No matter where you are, no matter what you're dealing with or how you're feeling, please know that you are part of a thriving, flourishing community, and that is the Positive Leadership Movement. We love having you be part of this family. Thank you for listening and for inspiring me to do what I do every single day.
Make sure you subscribe to the show. If you like this episode, please rate and review. If you want to get more from Alex, Check out Happiness at Work, where she provides leaders with a proven path to cultivate a positive work culture that increases performance, productivity, and profitability. Go to happinessatworknow.com. Join us next week and harness the power of positive leadership for your organization.